I'm sorry. You said the seven deadly sins versus who? What's up, guys? That guy with a hold on one moment. Pencil here. Fun fact: I do into. Whoops. Have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Another fun fact. We're doing seven deadly sins versus One Punch Man stuff, huh? I saw Ignil drop Cosmic Garl versus Bond is closer than you think. I'm gonna react to that one too because I saw that and like my brain exploded. But maybe this is a more relative matchup than I think it is. But here we are. Fun fact: I am a yapper, an undeniable yapper. So please do yourself a favor if you want to check out this originally 16-minute and 31-second video. It'll be linked in the description down below. I'll only link to, I'm not sure how to pronounce this YouTuber's name. I've been subscribed to them for a while. But I don't think I've been subscribed, listened to the videos, but I don't think I've ever heard them say the name. Is it Yacine? Yacine? I'm so sorry. However it's pronounced, go check them out. They're a fantastic content creator, great editing, great topics, heavily One Punch Man focused, so if you're into One Punch Man, you know what to do, you know, go run it. But with that being the case, let me quickly give my thoughts on the seven deadly sins. Oh, wait. Oh, that was so loud. In my ears. Oh, that's why. No wonder. I was like, man, even I sound loud. It's because I had my headphones up way too high because I was editing earlier. But with it being the case, Seven Deadly Sins versus S-Class Heroes is a massacre. I think it's blast. I think it's legit. It's blast. Like, notably, blast, and like, it really depends. It really depends on how you scale the sins. Like, notably, when I'm thinking of your meaty, your juicy, your hefty, your scrumbly, One Punch Man scaling, especially with like the recent manga stuff, like blast, you how do I put this in a way that sounds logistical? Unless you accept some early light speed stuff for some Seven Deadly Sins, and then you start bringing in 4-night scaling and retroactive backscaling for certain characters, I like Seven Deadly Sins kind of just get blitzed and one shot by blast. And they may just get blitzed by a bunch of other characters, but they wouldn't be able to do much damage. Like, for example, Meliodas probably wouldn't take any damage from Flashy Flash, but depending on how you scale Meliodas' speed, Flashy Flash blitzes him like a million times over. You know what I'm talking about? And like, obviously, not every sin is Meliodas level. No sin is Meliodas level, and that's kind of the issue, right? If you were to pluck out Blast, and I think the Seven Deadly Sins do actually win, simply because I don't see even Tatsumaki taking out Meliodas, mainly because I don't think she's kind of the highest scale one they have, right, out of the S-Class, because obviously S-Class wouldn't include Saitama yet, so I don't think Genos has any feats that would put him on the destructive capacity for the Seven Deadly Sins. And notably, if you're wondering, hey, Pencil Man, it's actually been a while since you talked about Seven Deadly Sins on the channel in terms of the scaling sins. Where do you actually scale the Seven Deadly Sins? Planetary bare minimum for like the end of series cast. Mainly your Mels, your Escanors, your Kings, and your Bonds. And the reason I say that is because they fought the Demon King. Demon King created a whole separate round. Demon King will interact with Chaos. And once again, that's like the low end. If you assume that anyone, and I mean anyone, of the sins scale to a fraction of 4 Knights Arthur, and then you backscale that, and you say the deities also scale to some portion of 4 Knights Arthur, because it's chaos, and they sealed chaos, and they were able to interact with their creator. And we've seen that Arthur has created multiple realms with whole star systems in them, whole starry night skies, which on the low end is solar, on the high end is like multi-galactic, if not universal. Then we could have a discussion. And of course there are like the highball interpretations of like original Seven Deadly Sins, no 4-night stuff, where you could get like uni characters if you just go with the idea that Chaos created the verse itself and not just the planet. There are hot debates on the translations and stuff like that. So overall, I'd say without Blast, the S-Class heroes kind of get like power gift. They just wouldn't be able to do any damage. And I know some of the S-Classes do have like a Durinag of some sort, but we know in Seven Deadly Sins, there are characters who can resist Durinag. Those characters include Meliodas. So like, they would kind of get power diff, so it really is Blast, because you go with just Blast scaling even to a portion of Cosmic Fiergaro and Saitama, and they're like multi-galaxy busting feat. I know like the low end is like, oh, it could just be like solar system level. It's not solar system level. And I know Blast needed help to do that, but still, the fact that he was able to keep up with Cosmic Fiergaro at all is like meaty, slap your meat on the table. That's kind of crazy. And then of course, even, like I mentioned, Flashy Flash, depending on how you interpret Seven Deadly Sins speed. If you go with the idea that characters, thanks to, like, early stuff like Gother, and statements about, like, goddesses wielding light particles, even the lowest tier of goddesses wields arc, which is light particles. Light particles are photons move with the speed of light. And then you just upscale from there, like, the million different upscales and, like, speed blitz, and you start stacking, then you can definitely get Seven Deadly Sins characters to, like, One Punch Man speeds. But that's like, okay, we're going with that, and then we're calc stacking. Versus, they're just like some feats in the One Punch Man manga where they're like forming light constructs through simple movement. And obviously there are like many different feats of characters. Well, actually, no. Are there, like, the thing is, Cosmic Fury Girl and Saitama, once they get to their fight, like, no one really scales to that. No one, like, not of the S class, like, not even Blast scales to that. But, like, once again, just that flashy flash feat alone is enough. And obviously, Blast would scale above that, just based on, like, the recent interactions they've been having in the manga. So, like, there are definitely ways that you can get some of these things up to that tier speed. But the only way you're making an argument is that you have to remove Blast basically entirely, and then you gotta give the Seven Deadly Sins their most valid scaling, or not most valid, but like some of their higher tier scaling, or do some back scaling from Four Knights and Chaos King Arthur, and then you need to hope that Blast doesn't show up. That's the main thing, right? Because I don't think like the rest of the S class isn't that much. Like, I don't know. Once again, I think Tatsumaki's best feat, I've seen it at best. Highest count, like the gigantic spear thing she does in the Monster Association arc right before the Cosmic Fear stuff. I believe that's been calced up to like large planetary, and you can get pretty much all the sins there. Realistically, the mid ball at this point, especially with any sort of backscaling from Four Knights, the mid ball for pretty much all the sins, the living sins, is like star level because of Arthur. It's literally it's all Arthur's fault, and the fact that Arthur still considers them relevant threats. Like that is literally it, because we've seen Arthur create whole multiple star systems, possible galaxies, and like none of the S class scale to that except for Blast. So like, once again, it really depends on what Yacine decides to do. If he ends up throwing Blast in there, then Seven Deadly Sins may get backshotted, but if he doesn't, then the S class here is gonna get one shot. So like, really, I'm interested to see which way this one goes, because I think this is the first, has Yacine talked about Seven Deadly Sins? The reason this caught my attention, and like, I think that literally was posted today, and I was like, I gotta react to this right now so I don't forget, is because I don't think I've ever seen him talk about Seven Deadly Sins, and I've learned a lot of my One Punch feeling from him. So let's not waste more time. 7 minutes into the video, let's actually start the video itself. Blech.
I've recently made a poll regarding the 7 deadly sins versus the S-class heroes in my community tab, and I was surprised of how much people wanted me to make this video, but even more surprised of the overwhelming victory the S-class heroes got, with only 23% out of 13,000 voted for the favor of the 7 deadly sins.
But see what I'm talking about with the editing? Like, I don't know. I'm trying to up my editing game. Fun fact, if you're wondering, hey, Pencil Man, you said Versus Battles are going to be back. Where are they? I'm going to make a separate channel for them, because, like, with how much I review now, and I'm only back to single uploads, I literally cannot have them on the channel. So I'm going to prepare more Versus Battles. I have a bunch scripted already. I have some recorded. I'm editing them. But I do want to up the editing quality so they're, like, at least close to this, because I'm still trying to edit all my own stuff. So give me some time. Let me cook. Versus Battles will be back. And I want them to have this tier editing, because it's just so good. Like, it's so engaging. And notably, fun fact, at least for your boy, I'm the kind of guy, I don't really watch videos, which sounds crazy, you know, like, hey, aren't you a content creator? What do you mean you don't watch videos? I don't like watch videos. I just put them on in the background. I like listen to them, and then if there's something that catches my ear, then I'll like go and look at my screen. But once again, I use like videos when I'm at work or when I'm doing something else. I don't know. I don't really like sit down in front of the computer screen and watch videos. So whenever I do, and I see stuff like this, I'm like, darn, I gotta up my editing game. I gotta up it to the extreme, but very interesting. But once again, I don't blame. Well, actually, let me go back to that poll he referenced.
Heroes in my community tab, and I was surprised of how much people wanted me to make this video. But even more surprised.
Yeah, so with the heroes who shows here, I agree with them. I'm actually kind of shocked people went with that. But when you say S-class heroes, my brain leaps to Blast. It just straight goes straight there. Because I'm like, S-class heroes, I'm thinking of the top tiers. Like none of these in this picture would be able to do anything to like Meliodas. None of them. But you need black, you get black, and then we go crazy. So I don't know, but even Yacine himself seems a little bit shocked. Once again, I'm gonna stop saying his name just because I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. But with that being the case, I don't blame people, because once again, if you're thinking of Blast, you think of those feats, man. It's just completely different. And here's the thing. One thing I will definitely give. 7 Deadly Sins is not as blatant a series as One Punch Man. In order to get to like its higher tiers of scaling, especially once you get to like the whole like uni stuff, the multi-galaxy stuff, you need to like look, think, and make extrapolations. Like you need to be like, okay, Four Knights Arthur makes entire multiple realms within pocket dimensions that contain entire star systems, and so far we've seen at least 5 of them. And he's all made these in less than like a 18-year period, presumably even faster considering the way we know chaos works. That much energy is insane for anyone who scales to him, and there are multiple characters who do scale to at least a fraction of Chaos King Arthur. They gotta scale to that. Or you have to look at the deity scaling and be like, okay, these deities are stated and confirmed to have made entire realms with either whole starry night skies or stars in them. Bada bing, bada boom. Like you have to do like linkages, and you have to look. In One Punch Man, the characters, they do just be like destroying star systems on the panel. like you just be seeing it. And they do just be creating entire light constructs by moving. Like you just be seeing it. Like there's not like, you don't have to do a lot of like stretching. It's when you get into One Punch Man even further and you'd be like, okay, they're making light constructs. How far can we stretch this? So that's when you start getting to even the more insane levels. Like you look at like the main feat that's coming to mind is it's Flashy Flash versus Platinum S versus Gara. And like I remember there were initial relatively low ball calculations that like, oh, this is like 50 something times the speed of light. But then people actually like start deep calculating, especially the second one that they make once Flashy Flash actually drops out, and it gets to like many times that. Same thing with the whole like Jupiter feat. Then them destroying Jupiter's moon and Saitama and Gara leaping around that, like that gets to way higher if you like look into it deeper. So Seven Deadly Sins is one where you kind of have to look deeper in order to get super duper high. Realistically, if you go purely by feats of destruction on panel in Seven Deadly Sins, the verse doesn't clear up like country level. It really doesn't. You have to think about it. You have to go in. Like there's Calx of the Behemoth that Ignil has done that. Apparently I think like large planetary just based on like the scale of the Albion relative to it. And we know the size of the Albion, stuff like that. So like you do need to think with Seven Deadly Sins. And thinking does have contentions and interpretations, and you can go back and forth on that. You smack a One Punch Man panel in front of somebody, you see Tatsumaki curling a gargantuan portion of the planet, or lifting an entire, like, continental slice of it off. You see Boros nearly about to destroy the entire planet, and it's like, oh, punch it hard enough to split the sky, like it's just there. You don't need to worry about it too much. And that's why even I like scaling One Punch Man, even though I don't talk about it all too much, because I don't have to think too much. And thinking is kind of hard for your boy. Your boy does not have that many brain cells. Let's see.
Surprised of the overwhelming victory the S-Class heroes got, with only 23% out of 13,000 voted for the favor of the 7 Deadly Sins. I actually had to make a pinned comment basically trying to inform you guys that the 7 Deadly Sins are no pushover.
Yeah, and like that's the thing, right? I hate to say it, a majority of the S-Class are fodder in this fight. It is really like the Fnatic 1. Blast and Tatsu are hard carrying, absolutely. Like, I'm sorry, Genos, not relevant. Darkshine, not relevant. Atomic Samurai, Flashy Flash in terms of AP, not relevant. Like, that's the thing. So many characters are not relevant. And there are, like, some stupid things, like, real stupid things that the Seven Deadly Sins cast could do to really jack some nonsense up. Like, if Merlin sets a perfect cube, they're kind of cooked. Like they genuinely, like, they may just be boom. The, like, majority of the S-Class heroes would bloom themselves trying to attack the perfect cube. For Meliodas, if he's feeling extra bloodlusted today, he could just speak all their souls away. No one in One Punch Man has shown resistance to that outside of, like, Saitama, who's messed with, like, souls before and stuff like that. That's it. Gother, if he just boom, like, there's obviously Fortnite's Gother who can, like, cast AoE illusions without even hitting you with any light, but of course, the Gother, if he tags you with any of his light arrows, he can just wipe your memory. Bond could just use Hunter's Festival in the middle of all of them, drain all their strength, and then viciously run around and one-shot them. That could even hypothetically affect Blast. We just haven't seen him doing it in a while. Like the Seven Deadly Sins are cracked. The only Seven Deadly Sins characters who aren't, like, cracked are, like, King and Diane. Because the King is, like, a very much a raw power type with some minor hacks interactions. But even then, he has things like what's it called? It's when he amplifies the damage that somebody's taken or worsens their illness. It's the disaster ability. I forget exactly what it's called because I haven't scaled King in a while. But, like, he has that. The only one who does, like, basically nothing. Well, unironically, the other one who's kind of, like, unique in the fact that they're mostly just a power type is Escanor and Diane. They're, like, the least versatile Sins. Because Escanor just hits you very, very hard and lets you on fire, and Diane hits you really, really hard and throws rocks at you. So, like, that's it for, like, your two basic tiers, but, like, almost every other Sin, from Merlin to Bond to King to Meliodas to Gother, they are all just dumb hacked out. Like, stupid hacked out. So they could literally wipe a majority of the heroes with some of their more casual and consistent hacks, but it really is, hey, how fast are the One Punch Man characters, how fast do these Seven Deadly Sins characters are, who's landing their win cons first, and what do you do about Blast? And Tatsu. Once again, I don't know. Once again, with me thinking about Tatsu's upper level scaling, I just don't think it's like high enough to actually do much damage. And notably, we've seen in some of these sins multiple characters resist forms of telekinesis and like psychic manipulation. Like it's kind of a thing. Like Merlin is just flat immune to any sort of mental manipulation to certain degrees thanks to like her blessing. So like Tatsu's kind of like it really is Blast that's hard carrying. But once again, we'll see because even I'm gonna keep saying his name, but Yacine even agrees like, hey bro, you think about it a little bit more. But let's see.
So in this video, based on the research I've gathered regarding the Nanatsu no Taizai manga, I am going to break down how this would go. So do not forget to full counter the subscribe button and the notification bell for more of these One Punch Man videos. Thank you.
That was a fire thumbnail, by the way. He made a
The Seven Deadly Sins, aka Nanatsu no Taizai, is a very underrated manga that tragically met its downfall by the hand of Studio Dean. In fact, prior to Season 3, this series was highly popular due to its crazy sense of adventure, really cool characters, and a very creative story. But thanks to the massive drop of quality from Season 3 and on, people just sadly stopped caring about it, and whenever
I saw that video too, I want to react to that one. I don't know why I haven't reacted to that one yet. It's kind of long. In fact, like, I'm still hot debating, and this will be a question for y'all, because I'm recording this, and I'm going to record a couple more reaction videos because of a certain thing that's happening soon, which means I may not be able to drop chapter reviews. Would y'all want a separate reaction channel where I also post, like, either every other day or daily? Because like, I have so, like, if you were to look at my watch later playlist, there are, like, so many videos I want to react to. But the only reason I don't react to them is, one, because, you know, I want to give the videos time to do their own thing, and two, like man, I got, like, 7 chapters drop a week. I got 7 videos I got to make. And I'm back to posting once a day. So I don't know. Would y'all want a separate reaction channel? Because I already made like a separate channel for shorts that just posts every day. Because I felt weird posting shorts on the main. So like I could do a separate reaction channel. If you think that I wouldn't be able to yap that consistently. Oh, I could. Let's see.
Whenever it's brought up in the conversation, it's always regarded as a meme. This is actually the same reason why people don't really realize how strong this verse is. I mean, the very first episodes or chapters shows characters performing feats of not only tremendous strength, but actually outstanding precision. Meliodas throws a spear back at Gilthunder, precisely aiming for his head from several miles away. But nonetheless, in order to truly understand how strong these characters are, you'd need to be tackling the Nanatsu no Taizai manga alongside its really well written sequel that goes by.
Okay, if we're bringing in Fortnite, okay, now we may have a fight. Okay, it may be a massacre. Like, because here's the thing. Even if you do highball blast, he does not scale to the upper ends of what Saitama and Gaara were doing. He doesn't. He just simply doesn't. But there are arguments. There are ways that you can get backselling for 4 nights. King Meliodas is crap. The fact that Arthur still doesn't want to engage with King Meliodas despite all the feats he's performed. Once again, just assuming Meliodas scales to a fraction, which we know he does. We see him directly scale to Chaos King Arthur while mentally nerfed. And we know in some of these things mental nerfs matter a whole lot. So if we really are backscaling, then yeah, Meliodas alone may be able to violate all the S-class heroes. You may need to go grab Saitama. Like genuinely in order to deal with but it really depends on how you scale Meliodas. Notably, I've found myself in the more mid tier of things. Once again, I do need to react to some of Ignil's videos. I have a whole bunch of his videos on the back burner that I'm gonna react to. Some of which you may see sooner rather than later. Who knows? But with it being the case, there are ways and methods. But I've always found myself leaning towards the middle, right? Now I'm kind of in the Seven Deadly Sins is comfortably multi-solar. Like that kind of just has to be the case based on what Arthur has done and the characters who scaled Arthur. Like your Lances, your Mels, your stuff like that. Arguably some of the Sins. That is just the case. But there are ways. There are interpretations. There are translations where you can get into that uni, possibly beyond uni plus. Even the speed, it's weird. I'll admit, Nanatsu no Taizai speed scaling is the most contentious part. Because characters keep seeming to be affected by light. That's also kind of just a thing that happens. Well, let's see.
The name of the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse, and when doing the research, I've come across 3 different metas of how strong these characters are.
Okay,
so here's the thing, it all ultimately boils down to 3 Seven Deadly Sins entities: the Demon King, the Supreme Deity, and Chaos.
So we're going with lore meta. Alright, okay. He knows ball. Okay, we're for then again. I know he scales One Punch Man characters, so we're in for a battle here. But he knows ball. You know, because that's the thing, right? I've seen, and notably, I remember even before Four Knights came out, the lore meta was like spreading. Like I saw a bunch of bigger content creators and I referenced the lore meta. And like I'm not saying I created the lore meta, but like I feel like I was the one who kind of like helped at least popularize it a little bit, like give me a little bit of it, right? And with that being the case, I was so happy to see it start to spread. But then Four Knights came in and just boosted the lore meta to the moon. And then obviously Cursed by Light dropped, and they gave us like the dual moons in the demon realm, and then of course we had the statements about the celestial realm, and obviously Mayal. Like there were levels upon levels of boost similarly since scaling. But once again, it was super heavily contentious until Four Knights dropped. But with Yacine bringing up Four Knights and bringing up the main, because like these are the main three. Like you have to rely on these three, and by proxy, Chaos King Arthur when it comes to Chaos, in order to like really get Seven Deadly Sins up there. But let's see where he goes with, because I'm assuming, I had to pick a guess, he's probably gonna go with like the three major metas, because. I don't even think he's going to address the lowest end meta then. If he's immediately leaping to these three, you kind of can't go with like they're like country plus, maybe continental and multi-continental. He's going to go with like planetary, for just assuming they created the planet, the lowest end of the interpretation of the Chaos statement, and if Chaos is the strongest of these three deities, which of course he is, they would be at the bottom, so everyone's planetary. Then you go with the multi-solar to arguably galactic, then you go with the uni stuff. Those are like the three metas. And once you get to like the multi-solar, you can actually make a pretty solid argument that the Sims will get blast back shots. Like that could be a case, especially if you go with the common interpretation of like speed scaling increasing with power scaling Seven Deadly Sins, which is kind of just like proven and implied with every single time Meliodas gets stronger, he gets much faster. I could see why it's called a massacre, but let's see, because it really depends how long. So he's gonna scale the Sins for a good chunk. He's gonna scale One Punch Man for an even. Okay, so let's see.
These guys are hands down the strongest characters in the entire series. However, the character with the most quantifiable feat.
Yeah, Big Mel himself. But what was I gonna say? I wouldn't actually. I'd say Chaos definitely is one of the strongest, but unironically, and y'all are gonna be like, "Oh, here goes Pencil Man with his power creep. Here we go." The Supreme Deity and the Demon King may not even be like. Oh, you know that's a lie. They're still up there. Yeah, they're still definitely up there. But really, are they? They ain't top 3 no more. At least I don't think so. Like they are not top 3. You got Mel. You got Chaos King Arthur. You got Lance. You could argue Bond once again with the way that certain characters are scaling, and definitely by EOS Four Knights. The Supreme Deity and Demon King may struggle to hit top 5. I'm telling, like that's how crazy Knock was going with this power creep. I ain't joking. Let's see.
It, especially in the first meta, is the Demon King, who actually has 4 separate forms, all scaled to between small planetary to planetary levels of AP.
Okay, yeah. So he's going. So we're doing it. Okay. I'm sorry. You don't know how happy this makes me, dog. I love it. I love that Seven Deadly Sins getting its respect. It's because yeah, he's right. Like, unfortunately, the anime did just like it took Seven Deadly Sins out back and then loaded up the Splagooter and just banged their head open. So you don't know how happy this makes me. Let's see.
This actually gets derived from the fact that the Demon Lord, while only at 50%, definitely scale above the Behemoth, who is a life spirit residing in the Demon Realm, capable of exerting gravitational energy relative to that of 30 zetatons of TNT, making him small planetary.
Yeah, and then any character who scales the 50% Demon King upscales from that, which would include pretty much all the Sins. So that is, but notably, once again, this is technically a low-end calc for the Behemoth size. I know that sounds crazy to say, but and I think Igneo literally has a video on it. I have to react to that video to go into it further, because this thing is actually like dumb huge when you calc it properly, which is crazy because he's right. The Demon King does scale above it. And notably, it even makes sense the Demon King scales above it because the Demon King created the realm that it lives in still, which is still much bigger. Like notably, while the Behemoth is implied to be genuinely massive to the point where like they don't even realize that they've walked upon it, it's not the entirety of the Demon Realm. In fact, I forget if they showed it in the anime already, but you don't even see the planet's curvature, despite the Behemoth being as big as it is. So the Demon Realm is actually implied to be super massive because of how big the Behemoth is and how you don't see planetary curvature whenever it's on panel. Let's see.
Plus, this is also substantiated by the fact that the Behemoth was able to shake the entire Demon Realm, potentially tearing it apart. And if you multiply this by 2, the Demon King at full power, which is 100%, would reach the lower end of planetary AP. This scaling is certainly crucial because characters like Bon, Meliodas, King, and Ascalon Escanor the
Yeah.
One were all able to damage various forms of the Demon King.
And not even just the one Escanor, but also just Final Shine Escanor. But of course, you know, Final Shine, the one. We can rock with it.
Certainly solidifying their position at small planetary plus at minimum. Meanwhile, Marlin with Infinity and Diane scale to the strongest demons, Chandler and Cusack.
Yeah. And, you know, Merlin, once again, she does have that one feat of actually damaging the Prime Demon King. And notably, the lowest end you could say the full power Prime Demon King is stronger than his 100% 3,000 years past self, plus Zeldris, which is actually pretty darn crack considering where Zeldris scales relative to portions of the Demon King's power. It'd essentially be like, the lowest is like a 1.5 times amp. On top of that, hypothetical 2 times amp. And that's like a low ball, especially considering where Zeldris scales to now.
Who are small planetary.
If you play video games a lot, you might be able to get paid some real money. If you live in the US and you play video games for over 10 hours and
beings.
Do I have to edit that out? Yeah, we're editing that out. Let's see.
Due to being superior to Assault Mode Meliodas and full
Hold on, wait, let me re-listen to this.
Who are small planetary beings due to being superior to Assault Mode Meliodas and full-powered Zeldris. Gother should at least...
I'll disagree with that, though. Cusack and Chandler are not superior to full-power Meliodas or full-power Zeldris. Quite the opposite is implied, actually. That's not the case. But, close enough. And once again, if you're using those two to upscale Merlin and Diane specifically, ignoring the one Merlin feat, that's fine. That's fine. Hey, I ain't not. Whatever you gotta do. Because you gotta get those two up somehow. And even Gother's one, he's kind of funky to scale in terms of stats, but his hacks applicability and his speed are what really matters the most for Gother.
He scaled to the 10 commandments, who are moon level, derived from having 1/11th of the Demon King's 5th.
Okay, so see, this was another, and this is why I've been a little bit tapped out, and I gotta tap back in. This was one of the biggest things that I was pushing for way back when, that a lot of people didn't agree with. People did not like that the commandments scaled to a portion of the Demon King's power. Whenever I said that, people would be like, no, that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't show it. And I do get, like, you know, you don't see it, doesn't happen. But, like, it is stated pretty plainly. He split his power, 50% of his power. You take a 20th of planetary, and that is moon level. And it depends on how high you even scale that half of the Demon King. You can scale him higher and then get the commandments even higher. So that is like, it is a thing, and I'm glad it's being accepted. Same thing with the Archangels, right? They scale to 1/8 of the Supreme Deity's power at a bare minimum. That's pretty crack. That's pretty crazy. I'll tell you, it's a pretty strong verse, I promise you. Let's see.
50% power. So the 7 deadly sins in the first meta range from moon level to small planetary plus in both attack potency and durability.
Though they'd even in the lowest meta, characters like Meliodas and Bon and, well, mainly Meliodas would just scale above that. He would definitely be in the solid planetary ranges because of how much he outpowers even the Prime Demon King at his full power in True Magic, and definitely by the time he's King Mel. And even characters like Bon and King and Final Shine Escanor plus the one Escanor would actually scale above that because they're able to do damage to the Prime Demon King, who's implied to be much above the 50% Demon King, who scales much above the small planetary behemoth. And notably, it's not even implied that, like, at least in the panel, he showed it earlier, it's not even implied that the Demon King struggled to subdue the behemoth. He was just like, he just beat it up. So it's not even like the behemoth is actually relative with its mass and power to the 50% Demon King. It kind of got victimized, like Assault Mode Prime Mel got victimized. So it's actually even crazier. Let's see.
Second meta exponentially elevates the power scaling even further, primarily through the creation feats demonstrated by the Supreme Deity, the Demon King, and Chaos.
There we go. Okay, so we're getting into it. Sorry, I'm so excited. You don't know how happy this makes me. So never mind. This may just be a massacre thing. Because once again, I don't know how you scale outside of Blast. I don't know how you scale Assembly Sins up. You scale a majority of the S-class heroes as high as we're about to scale the Assembly Sins. And remember, this is the mid-ball meta. So I'm assuming he's gonna go in. He's gonna go into the uni stuff. And once you get there, none of the S-class heroes compare.
Chaos. Each of these entities has crafted their own dimensions, complete with at least a moon and stars. You see, in Nanatsu no Taizai's manga, this concept is reinforced by Tarmiel, who implies that creation feats directly correlates with the character's power. He specifically states that Mael...
Yep. See, I'm so happy, dog. I'm so happy. I'm sorry. Let me stop saying I'm so happy. Let me let him actually cook. I'm only 3 minutes in. Let's go.
His ability to escape their dimension means he possesses power equivalent to their own. This logic places the top tiers of the 7 deadly sins at insane levels of power. Not only that, but Meliodas is heavily implied to have surpassed the Demon King by the end of the series.
He's not even just, it's confirmed that he's above his father, for one. And for two, because of his relevancy to the Four Knights plot as a threat to Chaos King Arthur, he's actually, like, just sheer scaling wise, he's actually well above even his true magic stuff. Arguably, like, Demon Mark or definitely Assault Mode King Mel is even beyond his true magic state from the 18-year pre-time skip, which is crazy to think about, but not actually too insane. I made a video on it forever ago talking about how Meliodas could actually be well above his previous true magic state just based on the threat that Arthur poses. We'll see.
Paired with the fact that in the Four Knights of the Apocalypse, the 7 deadly sins are portrayed as major threats to Chaos himself, reinforcing their standing among the highest tiers, which makes at least the top 3 of them multi-solar system level in terms of attack potency. Now, the third meta, which is completely crazy, introduces even more contentious claims hinging on the purported size of certain realms. This is according to one cover page describing Purgatory as in...
There is that. Yeah. I've always been mixed on this one, once again, because it's not actually in the volumes, but technically, you do take cover statements. Like, because this came out when the manga was releasing in, I forget which magazine. So technically, like, it is a thing. It is a thing. But the reason I'm hesitant with this one is because it is still not confirmed who made Purgatory. I'm assuming he's gonna go with the UD stuff on this. We don't know who made Purgatory. We know Chaos didn't do it. Chaos did not make Purgatory. Neither did the Demon King, neither did the Supreme Deity. None of the 3 major deities we know made Purgatory. So even if the underworld was infinite, even Purgatory was the infinite underworld, we don't know who made it. Alright? Unless you, once again, you misinterpret that Chaos statement and say he made every single realm in the verse that's not explicitly stated to be made by one of the other deities. We don't know who made it. So no one actually scales this. But let's see what he says.
An infinite realm, but this assertion, in my opinion, rests on shaky ground for several reasons. One, editors' notes and supplementary materials are often not considered as canon.
Yep, that was my biggest thing. Like, literally, in fact, I'm having such a good time, but I'm actually on a limited time frame for when I'm recording. I'll run over and grab it quickly. Fun fact. Years back when I was first, like, making a whole bunch of similes and scaling content, I went out and purchased... hold on. Wait, please. Please. Alright, there we go. I went out and purchased these 2 volumes of the manga. The ones that he's referencing that contain it. I believe it's in this volume right here. The cover page that supposedly has that infinite statement. Where is it? Is it this one right here? No. A little further. It's chapter... There it is. Very specifically, chapter 269, Purgatory Life, the statement just isn't there. Isn't there in the manga. It just doesn't exist. So, I've always been hesitant to use Purgatory. The way you do it, though, to get, like, 7 Deadly Sins still up to that, like, multi-galactic universal, is there's an Akaba statement talking about how there are starry skies that stretch on for oblivion and infinity and stuff like that. And then, of course, we see, very specifically, I think the most recent example of it was recently in the current arc of Four Knights, actually. There was the fighting festival, and we saw Anne and Percy out late at night, and there were not just multiple moons, but like multiple stars dotted all across the cauldron sky. And we know the cauldron is just a sub-realm of the multi-realm that is Camelot. So there are already starry skies in that realm, like a whole full starry night sky. And obviously that implies intergalactic distances, because like when you see stars, they aren't anywhere nearby us. They're like whole distances away. And if you scale up from that, and like Arthur had to create not just the planets that the characters are interacting on, but also all the stars in the night sky and all the hypothetical planets that rotate around them. And then for us to see stars of that scale, like there's like a one panel where there's like a bunch of white dots, which is a bunch of different stars. That's very similar to the One Punch Man panel, which gets scaled from either multisolar to galactic. So like there's that. And then you realize that Arthur made a bunch of these realms. Like, each individual for evil has their own realm that they live in, which also are implied to have those starry night skies. And there are at least 4 of them, plus Onfwin, plus the main realms of the Camelot. So that's 6 realms, all with multiple Starry Nights guys that Arthur presumably made like that because of how Chaos's powers work. So there still are ways without using the statement now, thanks to 4 Knights. If you're just using Timothy Sins, it's very, very vague. You have to kind of like do, oh, Chaos made the universe, even though that's not stated. He made the world. Which isn't, like, specifically, like, there are debates on whether or not that Sekai translates to universe or to world. But regardless, let's see.
And 2, the original Japanese text uses the phrase Hatanaki Kaiyo Guruguru, which technically translates to crossing through an endless or limitless other world, which means the term infinite or Mugen in Japanese is actually never used. However, others would still argue that chaos should be universal for creating the mortal realm, specifically calling it Sekai in the original Japanese text. Sekai can mean planets, the
And it can't mean society. I've seen people try to lowball that to society. I'm fine with planet. I'm fine with planet, even though planet technically doesn't make sense because of the Supreme Deity and Demon King and Fairy Tree statements that take place right afterwards, because they make more than planets. So, like, you can argue universal chaos, especially with once again, 4 Knights has kind of picked up and re-solidified, like, if the 7 Deadly Sins planetary to multisolar and star or possible uni meta was like in pieces, and like you had to like pick apart multiple pieces and click them together and like do a whole bunch of compilation because everything was really, really vague just before Cursed by Light, 4 Knights just said, no, we're gonna pick it all up, we're gonna smack it together, here you go, and then you can make a pretty solid argument for uni. Let's see.
universe or society depending on the context. And since we know it surely doesn't mean the planet, since the Demon Lord and the Supreme Deity created worlds that had stars, then that can only mean the entire universe. Well, I'd like to say that I personally feel like these types of claims demand far stronger substantiation for relying on ambiguous cover pages any single Japanese word. So we'd only be using the first.
Okay, alright. Though once again though, I'm not fully against like the multi-galactic to uni meta. Because of Arthur. He hasn't mentioned Arthur, he just keeps using chaos, but that's fine. Once again, I don't mind people, especially if you're talking about exclusive 7 Deadly Sins characters, not backstealing from 4 Knights. Fine by me. But at the same time, he does use a little bit of 4 Knights as a basis for like the small planetary stuff, so it's back and forth, but multi-solar to galactic isn't actually that crazy. And it's all because of Arthur. If you've ever been in a 7 Deadly Sins debate and you had to prove like planetary above, thank Chaos, thank Arthur, thank the Great Final Power Creep, dog. If you remove note how he didn't talk about anything before the deities were introduced. Because 7 Deadly Sins just doesn't have anything before the deities were introduced. And there's that higher tier power. But what I'm interested to see him scale is their speed. Let's see.
First 2 metas regarding this video. But anyways, when it comes to speed, things aren't really that hard to quantify. You see, when specifically talking about the speed of light in Nanatsu no Taizai series, the character that comes to mind must always be an archangel.
Okay, so we are going with the lower interpretations. The reason I say, and I know people roll their eyes when I say, oh, Ludishell's the lower interpretation, I, pencil man, hop off tip. And to that I say, I will never hop off tip. And second, the reason I say this is a lower interpretation is because we know all goddesses wield light particles. All goddesses wield arc, which is light particles, which are photons. And Ludishell is the highest tier of goddess, only beneath Goddess Elizabeth and Mael at full power. He is massively outscaled by a bunch of characters, and massively underscaled by a bunch of characters who also wield light. And of course you have characters like Start of Series Gother, who also wields light, who's super duper weak. So like, light is actually introduced way earlier than Ludishell, but I don't blame people for using Ludishell, because Ludishell does have that external statement by Nakaba that says, Flash allows him to move at the speed of light. It's kind of like the whole Kizaru and One Piece thing. Like, I don't blame One Piece fans for hating Kizaru and his many different statements, because even though he's a good basis for light speed, you can actually make a bunch of arguments for One Piece being much faster than light earlier on because of things like the pacifistas. Same thing with 7 Deadly Sins. Because of fodder goddesses, because of characters like early series Gother. There are even like some statements about other characters wielding light. I forget which ones they are though, but like there are a bunch of like earlier light stuff. But we're using Ludishell as a basis. This is where the S-class heroes can definitely get like a big leap, because you can go way earlier in One Punch Man than like the high tiers and the top tiers that get light speed stuff. But let's see.
Called Rudushiel, who has a grace that allows him to move at such speeds, but then still gets blessed by Ominous Nebula, a technique used by Zeldris calculated at 25 times the speed of light.
Another mid-ball, actually. That's not a low ball. Low ball is just like, it's slightly like 1.2 is the lowest I've seen Ominous Nebula calc, but I've seen it as high as like 300. And it's based on the fact that Escanor blitzes Ludishell and both got blitzed by Ominous Nebula. If that makes sense. There was some calc I saw where it was like, because Ludishell gets blitzed by Omnis Nebula, Ludishell is the basis for light speed, and then Escanor blitzes Ludishell, and then you stack the Omnis Nebula blitz on top of that, since Escanor couldn't react to it or probably block it, then there's like layers upon layers that would allow you to get up way higher for Omnis Nebula. Blitz it.
Right. However, it certainly is still an area of effect type of attack and doesn't generally scale to their combat and reaction speed. Zeldris himself literally needed 0.8 seconds to reactivate it, but still got blitzed by Ludishell. So most of these 7 deadly sins should only be faster than light for being able to contend with the Demon King.
But here's the thing, that once again, that is actually a little bit of a low ball, because we know that Ludishell would scale to an eighth of the Supreme Deity's power. We know power correlates to speed and similarly sins to the numerous times of Meliodas getting stronger, Escanor getting stronger, them all getting faster. Whether it's the one-to-one correlation, you can definitely argue back and forth, but there definitely is some correlation. And we know that a character like Ludishell gets viciously violated by Prime Assault Mode Mel, if not lower forms of Mel. We even see him get blitzed by Demon Mark, non-Prime Mel. And then that Mel goes on to get violated by 50% of the Demon King. Then that Demon King gets double its power. Then Massive, like, there are amps on amps that just faster than light for 7 deadly sins is actually just a little itty bit of a low ball. Especially with all, like, the earlier light stuff. Once again, that's fine. This is where the S-Class heroes can take it, though, because they have much more solid, immediate, you don't have to think too hard speed scaling. Let's see.
Now when it comes to abilities, as usual, I find it fit to talk about them in the how would it go section. And with all of this being said, how would these 7 deadly sins deal with One Punch Man's strongest heroes? I've already talked about the One Punch Man heroes in like 4 to 5 videos that you should go and check them out, but I'll still make sure to give a brief summary of how strong they are and what they can do. Only this time, I want to take a different approach, specifically talking about their speeds first. So, the most insane demonstration of travel, combat and reaction speed was showcased in chapter 155 and 156.
There it is. Yep, you gotta use this. And that's where you can say the S-Class heroes get it up. Once again, it has to be by Speed Blitz and Duraneg. That's like the only way. If we're actually using the plan, it really depends on where he scales their power. But I think you can't, unless it's Blast, you can't get them that high. I don't think you can. Even in his previous videos, I don't think he's gotten them that high. But let's say.
MS, Flashy Flash and Garu created geometric structure of light covering the sky over Z City. Yeah. Truly a remarkable feat. But strictly speaking, I personally believe that in this modern era of power scaling, everybody can somehow fight at light speed levels. It reached a point where sometimes it just doesn't feel like that's the case for some particular characters. If I come to you right now and say that Sukuna can fight at the speed of light, some would controversially agree and others would be very skeptical.
You can make arguments. I don't think so. you can. It just makes everything weird though. Like notably for a verse like One Punch Man and a verse like Seven Deadly Sins, light is consistent because a bunch of characters wield it and wield it specifically in ways that consistently have them at light speed. Goddesses as a species exist in Seven Deadly Sins. They all wield light. One Punch Man characters like Flashy Flash and Platinum S and Garo and Aitama and even Genos in certain calcs, they all have lightspeed feats that are like consistently shown across the verse. And they have characters who use lightspeed attacks. Like that is consistent. Even, and I know some people aren't gonna like this. I'm gonna say it. Even Naruto actually does have some kind of consistent light stuff with characters like Ikachi and numerous different attacks in the data books and move the speed of light. And obviously like there's high tier lights, but like light is more common in a lot of these other verses than JJK. For JJK, you have nothing that's actually implied to light speed. Just the interpretation of one of Kashimo's abilities that we don't even know if he used properly to actually have it at light speed. That's Sukuna reacts to. That's it. And like some interpretations of purple. That's it. Other verses though, way more consistent. But I can see what he means. Like everyone's light speed because speed is the most contentious thing, right? I made another video a while ago. I think I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make a versus battle channel that's like covers just versus content again, and I'm gonna make a reaction channel. I think I do, but we'll see. I'll do a poll on that. But with it being the case, I made a video a while back, literally called "The Importance of Speed." It is the most important thing in a versus battle. That's why giving the S-Class heroes such a massive gap in speed may even counteract the raw level of power that the Sins have relative to them, outside of Blast, of course. We'll see.
But if I tell you that Flashy Flash is faster than light, it'd be a very digestible idea because the demonstrations of his feat in the manga are just that clear.
See what I mean? That's the beauty of One Punch Man. It's just there. You do not have to make a whole bunch of million billion duodecillion arguments about, oh, light particle, blah, 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 blah. You just look at it. It's there. What's it?
The reasons I'm talking about this is because as crazy as this panel is, this feat is only calced at 4 times the speed of light. A very contentious calc with a very contentious number. There obviously exist other countless calcs claiming that there are 25, 100 and even
Those are the calcs I hear more often. I've seen the 4 times, but I think that's such a massive lowball, especially with like the earlier lightspeed stuff implied in One Punch Man. Like season 1 Genos has like some weird lightspeed stuff. Like that's just the thing. Like notably, I've always been more like I'm a mid baller kind of guy. Like if I'm taking 2 verses, I'm smacking them against each other, and I'm not doing inverse CLN. I'm taking the mid balls. Putting that down at 4 times when there are so many higher calcs for it is actually kind of crazy. What's it?
800 times the speed of light, and that's all due to the existence of one single problem: perspective. These lines can be much smaller than the crater as the moon is much smaller than the sun. This is still without accounting for the statement of nobody being able to know that these were the traces of 3 superhuman beings fighting in the sky, with the term nobody possibly including characters who can already react at crazy levels of speed. You've got Awakened Cockroach claiming he can dodge a light speed attack by precognition but fails to react to one of Orochi's horns, same horns that were dodged multiple times by Half Monster Garu. There even exists the statement saying that the S-class heroes would have toyed with Orochi in terms of speed if that fight happened, but you can still argue that the idea got retconned. The point I'm trying to make here is that most of the S-class heroes should already be faster than light, even without accounting for Genos and Atomic Samurai dodging lasers confirmed to have the properties of light. This idea gets strengthened by the databook statements regarding Stinger and Lightning Genji both having lightning speed attacks considered as fodder in comparison to the S-class heroes. That's of course if you believe that it's not hyperbolic, but nonetheless, the S-class heroes should all have faster than light combat and reaction speed.
Okay, so he's kind of, in my opinion, unironically, he's kind of low ball on both. For both sides, I definitely say, and notably, I know my Seven Deadly Sins fans are gonna be like, Pence, how dare you? But I would say One Punch Man is generally faster than Seven Deadly Sins. It has a higher speed feats. It has a higher assertions too. Like overall, I'm not even talking about like your top tier, god tiers. Like just generally, like I'd say it. So just locking them down to faster than light. It's simple though, because once again, we're covering 2 whole groups, and unless we want this video to be like an hour, yeah, we're just gonna go with that. Though there are you can get some MFTL stuff for a lot of S-class heroes. Like, I'm just saying. Let's see.
With Flashy Flash being implied to being much faster. Now, when it comes to AP, things are in fact pretty simple. If you use the one-shot tier method, you'll actually be able to get characters like Flash and Bang at multi to continental levels of AP.
But see, that's the issue. They peak so low in terms of power, except for Blast. So don't toy with me, Manga Man. Where are you going to scale Blast? And Tatsu specifically. Those 2. I need to know where you scale them. Because if you don't scale any of them to planetary, because there is a way, like there's a way to counteract the Blast metascaling. You could say 1, he needed amps from all his fellow people to even suppress the impact of the punch. 2, he didn't actually perform the feat himself, he just transferred the energy, which could be argued as more of a hacks thing rather than an actual AP thing. And he doesn't actually like damage Garo at all. So like he doesn't actually scale to even that pre-copying Saitama Garos. Like there are definitely ways you can actually lowball the blast feat or just like negate it in terms of like as feat 4 blast as well. And in that case, yeah, it doesn't matter. Some of these things do just violate, because even at the lowest end, small planetary, it's far above a majority of what the S-class heroes have to offer, and even the top tier S-class heroes without that blast feat. Actually does get kind of tragic. Let's see.
Possibly Atomic Samurai using the Sunblade narratively scaling at similar levels. You also have Tatsumaki, 10 Seconds Genos, and Pumped Up Metal Bat having the ability to exert multi-continental plus to planetary energy at the very least. Since Tatsumaki, while being nerfed, scales above Psycho Orochi, who scales above Orochi's small planetary kinetic energy or almost moon level potential energy. 10 Seconds Genos was able to match Psycho Orochi's 18 exatons of energy on 2 different times. And Pumped Up Metal Bat straight up damaged Sage Centipede via Resonance, a beam that should at least be on par with Psycho Orochi. Not to forget the strongest hero Blast, who is confidently multi-solar system and possibly higher for being able to harm Cosmic Fear Garu and survive these serious punch squares.
So yeah, so we're doing that, So we aren't gonna argue down. So see, that's the thing. I knew once Blast came in, that was it. Blast is gonna be the hard carry. He has the hard carry. But once again, how fast are you scaling Blast? And also, how many hacks is he being tagged by? Because if he gets ganked by all the 7 Deadly Sins, like say both sides are bloodlusted, I could still see Blast losing. Because if you go with the higher interpretation of 7 Deadly Sins where the characters are multisolar, they can keep up with Blast AP, and Blast doesn't have any way to like one-shot them one-shot, especially since like half the cast is regen. Or like healing into regen. And on top of that, they could hack that man to doom and despair. Like if Gothic gets his hands on Blast is cooked. If Merlin seals, well, no, Merlin is actually kind of useless in this context because like a lot of her attacks probably wouldn't work, except unless like the time stop, which she probably wouldn't be able to get off in time. And it's Mel and Bond who are like hard carrying against Blast because they could steal his abilities or steal his soul, or just like coat themselves in something that would make it so that Blast couldn't even touch them. Like, once again, Bond could be energy stealing, Escanor could coat himself in, those multisolar flames, and or Melios could just cover himself in Hellblaze. And like, what does Blast do then? I mean, he could try and like warp it away, but then he's gonna be close enough to get tagged. Let's see.
Explosion. Now, when it comes to the rest of the S-Class heroes, they all generally range from city to island level in terms of attack potency. Darkshine should at least be island level for scaling above Carnage Kabuto, who gets upscaled from Vaccine Man's true form, being at least a one-shot tier than his base form, making him mountain level. Puri Puri Prisoner sits at a lower level for slightly damaging Psycho Orochi, and Tank Top Master should generously be city level, upscaling from the Deep Sea King, tanking Genos' Incineration. And with all of this being said, can the S-Class heroes ever manage to defeat the 7 Deadly Sins?
Essentially, I'm running out of time. Essentially, this video is Blast versus the 7 Deadly Sins. With where he ended up scaling top, which I do think so far, I think for the AP scaling he's accurate on everything. I mean, you can definitely make higher arguments for Darkshine, actually, like with some weird recent manga stuff, but like, it really is just Blast. Everyone else gets one shot. Like one shot and possibly blitzed. and unless you, because I believe it's Atomic Samurai and Flashy Flash who do have some forms of Durin Egg. But outside of those two, like, most of the S-Class is actually kind of worthless against the Sins. So it is just Blast versus the 7 Deadly Sins. And he may just get ganked. That's the unfortunate. He may just get ganked. Diane could literally solo a majority of the S-Class heroes viciously and violently, while everyone else jumps Blast, which is bad. But
So, as much as I like the S-Class heroes, the 7 Deadly Sins have so many win conditions it's actually ridiculous. Believe me when I say that the biggest problem the S-Class heroes would face isn't the Sins' raw strength, but rather it's their absurdly overpowered abilities, which could secure them victory in an instant 1v1 situation against a hero with no prior knowledge. And even if you try to compare their physical power to the S-Class heroes, things still wouldn't be on their favor. You see, if you lowball these 7 Deadly Sins and only consider their first meta of power scaling, then most of them sit at moon to small planetary levels of AP, with Meliodas arguably being far stronger due to his implied superiority over the Demon King, which means the only S-Class heroes who can realistically contend with them in a 1v1 scenario are 10 Seconds Janos, Pumped Up Metal Bat, Tatsumaki, and obviously Blast. Others like...
And even then, I argue like 10 Seconds Genos and Pumped Up Metal Bat. Pumped Up Metal Bat is especially weird because like he only scales that high thanks to Resonance with Gaara. You can definitely argue that's not his base state. And Flashy Flash and Bang definitely don't scale because of how low they scale relatively. Like remember, the best speed feat isn't even that first light structure he shows, it's the second one, which Flashy Flash isn't even a part of. We know Flashy Flash is like the upper echelon of speed for the S-Class.
Like Silver Fang, Flashy Flash, and Atomic Samurai can hold their own, but ultimately fall short against the Sins. But here's the catch. What happens when Genos' 10 seconds mode runs out, or when Metal Bat hits his limits? These fighters are surely powerful, but their strength comes with extreme conditions. Silver Fang could still redirect attacks from Diane or Ban, and Flashy Flash might outspeed most of the Sins, assuming they don't scale to ominous Nebula speed. You can also argue that Tatsumaki and Blast can carry the S-Class heroes hard to victory, since both could comfortably defeat any Sin in a 1v1 battle. And if you believe that these Sins are only planetary at best, Blast could technically solo them all by himself. But
that was what my fear was, but with him accepting the multi-solar meta, Blast just gets jumped. I think that's the thing, Blast gets jumped. He didn't really give like a speed scale for Blast, which is But once again, we're covering our group. Honestly, I would love to see him redo this video as specifically Blast versus like Meliodas or Blast versus the 7 Deadly Sins, and giving Blast like more in-depth scaling because he scales way above what a majority of the S-Class has to offer. Unironically, they're actually holding him down. Let's see.
But as I mentioned earlier, that's only if we ignore these Sin's hacks and abilities, which literally changes everything. Take Bun for example. Even with his immortality, he still has Zero Sign, which lets him move undetected, allowing him to assassinate opponents effortlessly. Paired with Hunter Fest, which absorbs and drains his enemy's physical energy, allowing him to overpower previous relative opponents. And then you have King, whose spear petrifies anyone it impales, literally considered as an instant win con against most heroes. Not to mention Merlin, who is the personification of abilities in the Nanatsu no Taizai series. She can amplify her allies, use Perfect Cube to trap and reflect attacks from any of the S-Class heroes, teleport to any location, and can make any magical spell last for eternity. But the most problematic member when it comes to abilities is none other than Gother. You see, most of Gother's abilities are considered as an instant win con. You have Nightmare Teller, where he traps you in a nightmare with the possibility of never waking up, induces visions amped with the user's traumatic memories. Just imagine Darkshine being trapped in an illusion, replaying his memories of getting absolutely demolished by Garu, Vomited Fury Ugly, and Golden S. That'd be very funny to see. And even if they escape, they're left mentally broken and physically exhausted. He can also manipulate and implant non-existent memories, paired with the ability to literally control his opponents, making them his allies in an instant. I gotta say that this character just has so many abilities.
He can also just instantly wipe your memory. He can just cast Lost World on somebody and they instantly lose all sense of self. That's a win con in of itself. Gother is cracked. The main reason, and I think this is why I always say, authors care more about power scaling than you think. Gother is cracked, but he's balanced by the fact that his stats aren't too crazy. If he had some Meliodas tier speed, or heaven forbid some Meliodas tier AP, that man would be unstoppable. Let's see.
That just fatherizes a lot of heroes. He's simply somebody he needs to be dealt with immediately in a battle royale situation. Now here's the thing, the S-Class heroes might stand a chance against these 7 deadly sins in their first meta. Nothing prevents Blast from blitzing them or banishing them to another dimension. Although Merlin could potentially have an answer to that equation, but the fact still remains that Blast is significantly stronger than small planetary beams, and assumably having resisted god level manipulation, he'd likely counter Gother's abilities as well if he ever managed to tag him.
Only issue with Gother though, Gother vs Blast actually is interesting. Because Blast, the only reason he ever resisted the god stuff is because he never engaged with it. Yeah, I don't think, like, he actually did grab the cube, but we know, like, the way that the deity of the One Punch Man universe interferes, it is a matter of willpower to a degree. But remember, Gother had, when he was much weaker, by the way, Gother has manipulated deities before. In fact, we see him in Cursed by Light literally instantly neg and shut off the supreme deity, who still massively scales above him. So I wouldn't be shocked if Gother is still effective on Blast, because Gother's abilities and hacks scale far above his actual, like, raw magical strength and physical strength. So Blast may still get victimized, especially considering what Gother does versus what God does in One Punch Man. Two different things. Gother touches you and tries to either take over your body, wipe your memories, or implant fake ones. What God does is essentially try to reach into you and, like, convince you to work with him. So Blast resisting that versus resisting actual mind wiping, different things. Body control, different things. Like, I don't know. Gother's still kind of funky against it, but I think the main thing would be how well can the Sins counter getting BFR'd, and in the case of Merlin, she could just come back, depending on, like, where she gets teleported to. And Meliodas, there are weird arguments that Meliodas can just, like, resist teleporting, because, like, weird things he does against Merlin. And also against other characters who can, like, BFR people. Like the thing, his fight against the Demon King is actually really weird. Because we know the Demon King can just, like, he can kick open a portal and boom somebody, but never does it to Meliodas. Once again, that's more so like a power thing versus actually a hack resistance thing. Let's see.
Him with his arrows in the first place. However, in the second meta, where characters like Meliodas and current Bond reach multi-solar system, a comparable level to Blast via creation feats, the odds would certainly shift dramatically. While I still believe that Blast could still compete with his superior speed if you don't scale them to Ominous Nebula and don't stack up speed from Gother.
Okay, so he does mention it. He knows that. He doesn't mention the goddesses though. He funny enough, he brought up Pluto Shell as a base for Lightspeed, but didn't mention any of the goddesses in their arc particles. But characters clearly scale beyond Ominous Nebula. That is a thing that is very established, and characters do scale to it and, like, reacting to it and just reacting above it and just negging it in some cases. So, like, Ominous Nebula is not like this apex of the verse thing. That's the one thing I'll go with. But once again, I get it. I get why, because he's so right about speed and power scaling. It is the most definitive win con, and it's also the most contentious because it's the most definitive win con. So I don't blame him for that. Let's see.
There's arrows being stated as light, his chances of victory still diminish significantly. The pre-Racon chapters suggest he might be far stronger and faster, but currently we're left with him at multi-solar system level, putting him on par with top-tier Sins. The situation becomes even more dire if we consider the controversial third meta where some Sins reach universal levels. But as I said, this needs more evidence than just the usage of a word and a questionable chapter cover. So if it's all the S-class heroes versus the 7 deadly sins in an open field, just the heat emitting from Escanor's presence would make it difficult for Silverfang to use the Awakening Breath, and would just melt most of the low S-class heroes, allowing them to fight with even numbers. But in a nutshell, the only character that can compete with top tier sins is Blast. In a 1v1 fight against them, he can certainly win, but would still be a very competitive fight. But on a battle royale situation, these sins are much more organized, battle tested, and have many overwhelming surprising abilities.
The main issue Blast would run into is whenever Bond decides to interact with him. Because Bond could literally just open up with Hunter's Festival and Blast is cooked. Because his relativity vanishes, his speed, reaction speeds drop, and then he just gets blitzed and viciously one-shot. Bond really, like, when you're doing something like Sins group fights, I'd say the two main characters you look out for the most, and you're worried about the most, are Bond and Gother. Because Bond can instantly nerf the other team while buffing himself drastically, and also Gother can just mind wipe somebody. So Bond is like the most annoying thing here. But yeah, alright, so he did actually have to go with the Deadlies. Okay, so I was a little bit scared for nothing at the start. But let's let it play out.
That would catch most of the S-class heroes off guard. They're just much stronger than most of the S-class heroes, as I can confidently say that most of these sins would demolish characters like Tactile Master, Puri Prisoner, Child Emperor, Zombie Man, Darkshine, Pig God, and Drive Knight. The only characters that can somehow compete are still very vulnerable against these 7 deadly sins abilities, with only Blast with his superior speed being the only one who can stand a chance against them. Thank you so much for watching, and please consider subscribing.
Okay, I did subscribe. Let the last 2 seconds of the video play out, but I just want another ad to play. But W video, we love some 7 deadly sins respect and low-key glaze. We take that. And overall, I like it. Once again, the only thing I'll be like, oh, let me have one slight critique so I don't sound like I'm glazing this channel and this entire video to the extreme. I think he is kind of lowball on the speed scaling for both sides, but mainly because this is a group battle and he wants to make this video not an hour long, like this current video already is, as I see from OBS. And that's perfectly fine. I get it. I know there are going to be people who are going to be like, there's no way suddenly since he skills multi-solar. Don't worry. I'm going to make a versus battle channel. I'll explain that more in depth over there. And I'm just going to react to some more Ignil videos, because Ignil does a fantastic job of explaining the higher metas. And for the speed stuff, once again, that's fine. I get it, because speed is really contentious and it's really annoying. Like, honestly, it's why half the time I like to just equalize speed, and speed isn't a factor, because it doesn't really, it causes too much trouble. But with it being the case, if you made it all the way to this video, please leave 7 deadly classes. See what I did there? Is that a 7 deadly sins? 7 deadly classes using S-class heroes about 7 deadly classes in the comment section down below. I want to thank you so much for watching. Remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure the lowercase post you not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, you're going to have a Patreon below where you support me for as low as $1 a month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. So now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the live reactions, so this is them to review every variations of all my videos. And if you become a $12 Patreon or $12 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, there's also a link to my co-founder description down below. You drop 5 minutes for a short video, 20 being a small video, or any means at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is that guy with the pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Redwolf 4765, Astro, Super Flame 0, Glacier XZ, Zera, Brendan Payne, J2MA, Guillaume, Buddha Ura, Alex Kenny, Yuki Ally, Enzo, Nevis97, Zachary Wilson, Azo2404, Planet Crone, Rye Rich, and G Prosper. Then, I'd like to give a thank you to our line art tier patrons: Sean, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin Encarnacion, Dread Zoan, and A+A. Then, I'd like to give a thank you to our Ink tier members: Austin Wimberly, A. Uchiha, and Shrimpo the Shrimp. Then, I'd like to give a thank you to our digital art tier members, J Warrior and AZ Void. Then, I'd like to give a thank you to our colored art tier patrons, Waki Munoz and Waki Munoz. And I think the final, Giga Super Gargantuan Legendary Ultimate and even further beyond, thank you to our Ultimate tier, that guy with a pencil tier patron, Calvin Elder.